All right, welcome back to yet another installment of our alumni interview series. Today, the star of the show is Marissa. I'll have her introduce herself in a little bit here, but as always, my name is Rachel. I'm the CIE TEFL Sales and Marketing Manager. I taught abroad in Spain from 2016 to 2018 with CIEE. Had a great experience and very excited to be here on the back end of CIE and helping folks to do the same. So Gabby, I'll have you introduce yourself and then we'll get to Marissa.
Yeah, my name is Gabby. I'm a Teaching TEFL program advisor for CIE. I'm also a CIE program alumni of the Teach in Thailand program as well as the Teach in Spain program. So yeah, I'm pumped to be able to listen to Marissa's story and see where she's at now and how her process was as well. So let's do it.
Excellent. All right, Marissa, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, hello, I'm Marissa. I am a Seattle native, so very in love with the Pacific Northwest, and I am an alum of both the CIE Teach in Spain volunteer program in Castilla y León and the Teach in Spain program in Madrid.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, so you've gotten a taste of Spain in two different ways through our programs, which is great. So I always like to kick off the conversation by getting a snapshot of where you were, and I guess we can start with like where you were before you did the volunteer program, and kind of how you got into looking into teaching abroad and why Spain.
Yes, so my background is very heavy in corporate administrative roles. So when I first did the volunteer program in Leon, I actually was fortunate to take some time to visit Spain and did the volunteer program and lived with a host family. So that was my first experience teaching abroad and working as full-time in a classroom as possible. So I was there for about 3 months and fell in love with the idea of being in a classroom and getting to build relationships with the students. And it was also interesting because it was the first time the school had an English assistant. So we were all learning together. On top of that, living with the host family was a very once in a lifetime experience for me. I knew that in making such a move, I wanted to fully immerse myself in the culture. So I got to do that both by working in the school and then living with the family and getting to have that local experience. So once I finished that program, I knew that teaching was something that I wanted to do more of. And it really had me wondering how I could make that possible. So I continued to work in the Seattle area. And then just as time had gone by, I realized I do like what I'm doing. I know that I love teaching and I want to make that move and just take that leap. So then I found myself in Madrid for the past academic school year, and I loved being in the classroom again, full time. And this part of this type of program, I loved that I was with the students the entire school year. So not just 3 months, but for 9 months. And this time I got to live independently in a major city, which was a different experience, but still gave me that very comforting feeling that I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so give us a little bit more insight on like the timeline of how that worked out. Like when did you go to do the volunteer program, and then how much later was it that you went to do the full academic year program?
Yes, so in total, it was a span of about 3 years. So it was 2022 that I taught the first time and then continued to gain my work experience and then spent some time in Seattle before I went back to Spain. Um, yeah, I mean, with it being 3 years, it happened so fast, but also slowly at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think this is I think it's something that folks don't know about when they get into teaching, but it's definitely something that you can combine if you're interested in doing the volunteer program. Like Marissa said, I think it's super unique that you get to stay with a host family. It is true that it's a shorter program, but it gives you time to get your feet wet in teaching and see if you want to do it for a longer period of time. And again, it can be combined then with the longer term teaching position later on. You can go back to Madrid and have that kind of secondary experience. But yeah, that's cool that you had, it sounds like you had a good amount of time in between to, go back and work and save up money and things like that and really plan out your next time in Spain. So that's great too. My next question too is like, what what was the nature of your role in the United States? And like, what role did you come back to professionally? And how do you think that translated to help you in the classroom? Because I know you wrote a blog on, I wasn't a teacher before I went, so I'm really curious to know like the nature of your professional background before you went to Spain, and then how that contributed to, your teaching role.
Yes. So to paint some context, I actually went to school to become a teacher, a high school teacher specifically. It was my dream to be a high school principal. So I went through school thinking I was going to do that. And then when it came to actually joining the workforce and after finishing school, it turned out a little bit differently. So I found myself in more of that business administrative setting where I was actually focused on community engagement, philanthropy, scholarships, college recruiting, mentorship, that type of relationship building. So while not being in a classroom every day of my work, I was still closely tied to that environment. So although I didn't become a teacher, I still got to have some teaching experiences like working for a financial institution where I got to teach budgeting classes and give high schoolers a taste of what it's like to manage their money, especially after high school when you're just thrown into real life. Also, in another industry that I worked in, which was manufacturing and aviation, I got to work closely with high school leaders and help create a pathway for graduates to find a way into the company after they finish school. So those are just some examples, but the nature, in essence, was helping people get to where the next step is in life. So my philosophy personally is just helping people get to the next step that they want to do, or maybe discover what it is that they want to do. And at the same time, that is something I found true for myself. I had an idea of what I wanted to do. It didn't turn out or happen the way that I had planned, but it actually was still very, very encompassing of everything that I wanted to be. I hope that answers the question. I think I kind of went off on a tangent. Did I miss anything?
Absolutely. So it was more or less kind of a consulting and kind of helping people find their path.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, that is such a powerful message because I think a lot of times we think, I mean, you can tell me if I'm wrong, Marissa and Gabby, that like after you graduate college, it's like, okay, I gotta find my career. And a lot of times, your career is found throughout many years of your life. I mean, it's not just, when you turn 22 and you graduate from your undergrad, that's when you definitively know what your career is going to be. It's important to do that exploration and, and help others in a consulting role, or maybe go abroad and teach. I mean, I think there's lots of flexibility. I mean, we talked about this yesterday too, about flexibility within the field of education and kind of the vast roles that you can hold within education. So it's really cool to hear kind of like the different positions that you held in different industries. And then how you, went back and you're teaching, or you were teaching in the last couple of years in Spain. So that's awesome. I mean, the next obvious question to me is like, why Spain in particular?
I actually studied Spanish, like many of us do. I studied Spanish in school, and I always knew that that was a very prominent language here in the US. So I wanted to gain the skill there. But I also knew that I wasn't going to have the opportunity to really practice that outside the classroom unless I was immersing myself in a country that had that as the official language. And that goes for any language, really. For me, that just happened to be Spanish. So I decided to go to Spain because I wanted to go to the heart of it and learn more than just beyond the classroom. And I got to do that by living with the family, talking with the teachers. So that's how I chose Spain.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and tell us more with relation to like working on Spanish, because I've mentioned this many times with people I talk with over the phone and in the interviews with alumni too. It's like, it is what you make of it when it comes to learning a language. And I think a main goal for most people when they go to Spain is to learn Spanish. Whether or not folks actually learn Spanish and apply that while they're there is really up to each individual person. So, I mean, with the volunteer program specifically, because you're living with the host family, how did that impact you and then your Spanish language?
Yes. So agree with everything you're saying. That just hit the nail on the head. It is what you make of it. So I can speak to, yeah, both experiences. So in living with the host family, that is the most I've seen my Spanish grow.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was forced to talk with a family who had a level of English, and they also learned from me in having me in their home. But because it was all around me 24/7, I had no choice but to speak Spanish sometimes. And of course, the power of Google Translate comes in handy every now and then, but I didn't want to have to resort to that. So um, I lived with the parents and their two children, and um, from morning to evening, it's just Spanish, 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 especially with the friends too. So
Mm-hmm.
because I was living in Leon, which is a little bit farther out from major cities like Barcelona or Madrid, there are less English speakers. So much that I remember during orientation for the program coordinator had told us, you're going to be living in quieter villages, smaller towns, that you might be literally the only English speaker there, where don't be surprised if media comes to your school and wants to interview you, you're showing up in the newspaper. And I wasn't quite sure how true that was going to be, but it actually was for me.
Really?
Where, because how I mentioned, it was the first time my school had an English speaker, so there was that attention in wanting to highlight and show um, this immersive experience. So again, cultural exchange, and then also practicing the language with that. And
Mm-hmm.
then in Madrid, because there were so many more English speakers, I guess I should have thought about that before arriving. So, taking from my experience in Leon, I came to Madrid thinking I'm going to pick my Spanish back up where I left it a few years prior. But I was really surprised because it wasn't as forced upon me, or that I wasn't trying as hard. So every time I was trying to speak in Spanish with the Spanish speakers, they would just respond to me in English. Or sometimes I just really had these brain parts and couldn't remember my Spanish. And so I had to pull out the translate and regain my skill that way. But that said, it was really discouraging at first. I remember the first month I was in Madrid, I was thinking, what's the point of even trying to practice when I'm not going to have anyone to practice with like I did the last time? But because it is what you make it, I made it more intentional to speak it, even if I was struggling, even if the person trying to understand me was struggling. It was still important that I just try, and eventually I was able to regain that confidence in doing so, and it ended up being a more successful and overall just better process and experience for me.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so interesting. So did the media show up in your placement in Leon?
No one on the TVs, but I did have essentially the principal at the school wanted to interview me and had me on their socials, just to bring attention to this new program that they had.
Yeah, I have seen on Instagram, I've seen schools tag the language assistants, particularly for the region of Castilla y Leon. So I know they're very grateful to have their English language assistants for sure, out in their schools and to be helping with the English level. But that's awesome. I mean, yeah, it's so different when you're living with the host family and you're like forced into that immersion aspect day and night. And then in Madrid, it is true. It's like it's a very international atmosphere. And I really like what you said about feeling frustrated. I mean, I think that's a normal thing to feel in your first month, because you go in with expectations that, okay, I'm in Spain, I'm going to be immersed in this thing, and then everyone is like outright speaking to you in English. And so yeah, to kind of come out from that and grow from that is difficult. But something that you can definitely do, and continue to improve your Spanish. And I think another thing too that people forget is that even if you have spoken Spanish, you've improved your Spanish in the past, if you haven't used it for a while, that also is very jarring, right? Of like, ooh, like I did forget X, Y, and Z words to explain this.
Right, right.
So yeah, very difficult, very difficult. Well, I think the next thing to talk about is kind of the preparation process of like how you prepared for going to Spain, and if you can compare like how you were preparing to go for the volunteer program versus going to Madrid. I'm sure maybe going to Madrid after having been in the volunteer program was you had a little bit more of, what to expect, but was there anything special about your preparation process that you'd recommend for others to do as well?
Yeah, I think it's funny, and I like how you mentioned at the beginning of this webinar is that sometimes we don't talk about what happens after we have all this build up to start the program, go through it, but then after that, it's like, oh, okay, now what? So I definitely experienced that coming to Madrid because the first time I taught when I was living with a family, I, wide-eyed, very excited and very enthusiastic about this experience. And that showed when I was there. It was a very memorable time that I had there because I made it, I made it that way. I was open to it being that way and open to whatever would come. That said, I took that experience and assumed everything that I had done before, everything that I had learned before was going to apply the same exact way in Madrid. So in preparation for Madrid, I was thinking about what does this mean for the work that I'm doing? What does this mean for my finances? What does this mean for my family and friends that will stay in Seattle that I'll be half a world away from? So thinking about those logistics and being so caught up in all those things because I was going to be gone for a whole year, I feel like when I actually did arrive to Madrid, it was that, okay, now what do? I almost feel confused as much as I prepared. I almost don't know what to do with myself. And that contributed to that frustration that I mentioned earlier about learning the language. I felt like I had to learn again how to adjust to a big move like this. I almost felt like I wasn't supposed to be there, honestly, because I had thought I had prepared enough and I had shown myself otherwise, but I had to remind myself, okay, this is an experience depending on what I make of it. And if I'm going to make it a positive experience, I have to think more positively while also acknowledging things can be discouraging or frustrating. There's also a brighter side to this. So as far as preparation goes, that was a big thing that I learned was that as much as you prepare, there are still some things that are unforeseen and you just have to roll with it and figure it out along the way.
100%. I think therein lies the advice is that you can prepare all you want, but there's still going to be the unknown that's gonna hit you pretty hard when you arrive anywhere abroad, right?
And I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead,
Marissa, I
Gabby.
love that you said that they were two completely different experiences and trying to take your first experience abroad in Spain to your second experience and just comparing everything. Like, how could you not want to do that? I mean, it's the same country, it's the same role. There are so many similarities, but ultimately your experience is going to be completely different, which I think does come with a shock. Someone that I met while teaching in Spain, they left for a year. They lived in Spain for a couple of years. They left, and then they came back and moved to Europe again. And she said the exact same thing. She said, I don't know why, but I came in thinking this was going to be exactly like my time, in this case, in Madrid. And I tried to utilize the exact same experiences, preparation, and skills, and it just wasn't the same. Like, so I completely understand that. And it's hard not to do that, especially, if you're bouncing between programs or countries like within Europe or areas like that. But yeah, I think you bring up a very good point of like to keep that openness there, even though you're returning to the same country. How could you not? So I totally get that.
Yeah, and on that note too was I mean it was a reality check for me really because when
Yeah.
I had arrived to Madrid and feeling more down in the dumps than not, I I mean I'll admit I came to the program thinking, okay, like I got this, I have everything figured out, I've done this before, I can do it again. And to some extent that's true. But I also realized because it's a different experience, I also need to take a step back and absorb what is happening now. What are the things that I can apply from the last time or even other experiences that maybe unrelated or less directly related to Spain? How can I apply that to now and use that to my advantage to better this experience instead of staying where I was, which was, what the heck did I just do? Why is this not the way that I had intended? So that said, even looking back on it, I am so glad the way that I did the program, but I know there's also that immersion option that you can have in doing this Teach in Spain program. You can live with the family, right, for 2 or 4 weeks. And because I had lived with one before, I didn't think I had to do it again. It worked out that I did it this time, but that's something that I would have maybe reconsidered, just thinking about the benefits in adding that experience.
Yeah, I think the immersion program that we offer is super cool. I mean, even if you are fluent in Spanish, you've been to Spain a million times before, I feel like the immersion experience is still something that folks should definitely give a thought about, because I mean, it just really helps establish yourself in the community when you first arrive. I mean, because you're staying with the host family, you're getting into the language that way. You have intensive Spanish classes either for 2 or 4 weeks, whatever you decide. And the thing for me too is that then you also have like a built-in contact from locals too, which I think is super, super important. I know, Marissa, you met up with your host family again in Spain after having completed the volunteer program. But I mean, like those like local connections are everything when you're feeling a little out of place. So yeah, if you guys haven't heard about the immersion experience, for sure, give that a look, and ask questions if you have any, because I think that definitely worth a while, for Madrid, for sure. But yeah,
Right.
so,
Yeah.
well, you have anything else to say on that topic?
Yeah, just really quickly, especially with having that contact, right? I think if I had chosen to add on that option of immersing myself with another family in Madrid, I would have been more comfortable while I was apartment hunting and also just getting the swing of Madrid life, because it's so
Yeah.
different from Leon, especially. I know in having moved to Madrid, I didn't know anyone. I mean, was certainly open to meeting the people I was going to meet, but I didn't know anyone. I didn't have anyone to resort to and consult. I mean, I had my family in Leon, which helped at times, but it was different than having a contact directly in Madrid who could help me just get my feet wet and be more comfortable navigating everything. So yeah, having the connections is definitely a big benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. One, so I think coming from like you arrive on the second program in the Teach in Spain and Teach in Madrid program, and you're feeling a little out of place. But you still had an amazing experience. I know that you speak very positively of your experience teaching in Spain for the full year. What do you think helped transition from like that awkward like first arrival a stage to then really like embracing and enjoying your experience? What kind of pushed that over the edge to help you feel more confident and more secure in your location?
Oh, yes. I am getting excited thinking about this because I distinctly remember it was about maybe a month and a half or so to arriving into Madrid.
Mhm.
And I hadn't found my apartment. I was feeling so upset that all my friends were finding some place to live and I'm still on my friend's couch, which very, very fortunate that I had that available to me. But
Mhm.
I was just feeling like, okay, when am I going to have my time to feel settled and get into my routine and, just really start my life here? And I remember I was talking with my friend who also made a move abroad, and he said, things are different. Things are crazy right now. You're moving at 100 miles per hour, but try to do things that bring you comfort and try to get into routine that way, so that you are not feeling like everything's so all over the place. So for me, that meant, even though I was not settled in my own home yet, trying to go to the gym, getting back into my gym routine, taking walks, and then also, what were some other things that I did? Calling my family.
Yeah.
That was helpful too, where I think I was just so caught up in, I'm here, I have to get things figured out, but forgetting and being reminded by my friend to resort to things that do bring me that joy. So getting into those routines definitely helped me a lot. And then once I did finally find my apartment and was able to settle into my routine, I remember I took my trip to visit my family, my host family in Leon. And that
Mm.
was the first time I was seeing them in a few years. So it was comforting in so many ways and also encouraging that, this may be the situation now, but it doesn't have to be the situation forever. So seeing them helped me remember that I can do this. So when I got back to Madrid, knowing that there were so many English speakers around me, I remember talking to my teachers at school and saying, I have a request. I need you to speak in Spanish with me, because they want to practice their English too, even as English teachers. It's not every day that they have a native English speaker to practice with. So before that, we had always defaulted to speaking in English, but I also requested of them, I want to practice your language just like you want to practice mine. So please be adamant about that. And fortunately, they were very supportive of it. I love the teachers that I work with. So those were just a couple of things that helped me find that comfort in my move to Madrid.
Yeah, absolutely. I think really powerful, the routine. I always felt like when you first arrive on program in Spain, at least for the CIE program, it's like everything's a little crazy because you have this orientation and you're like soaking in all this information, right? Which is super important. And then there's also a lot of downtime where it's like you're looking for an apartment, but you're not like working quite yet. And so that arrival time is very hectic. And like you're saying, once you get into like the teaching role, you start meeting like, you know, your coworkers and the students and everything like that, and then falling into routine and really establishing, being, you know, diligent about establishing routine, not only for school, but also for yourself and your hobbies that you want to set up for the year. That is the turning point, I think. At least it was for me as well. I identify with that too. It's like, you know, you finally can really feel like you're living your life again, and not like in this period of limbo and transition, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Period of limbo is the key. Like it can go
Yes.
either way. It can go either way. Try to get on top. Is that how limbo works? You want to go above the bar.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And we are creatures of habit at the end of the day too. So, that's really important. Well, and so tell us more about, because now you've held teaching roles at two different schools in Spain, and Spain is notorious for having different responsibilities for language assistants at different schools. So I'm super curious to know, as someone who worked in two separate schools, like what are the responsibilities of a language assistant and what does that look like in practice?
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's a good question. So overall, the expectation is that you are assisting the main English teacher in your classroom. So whatever that looks like depends on the school. So in general, it is being hands-on with the students, helping them practice their conversational skills, taking a look at maybe some writing exercises and editing those essays. But I think the overarching thing is to be open to whatever you're given. So now I'll break it down. So in Leon, I actually was in one school that had 5 or 6 campuses that I was in across the villages. And
Wow.
each school or each campus was different from each other because all the teachers I was working with were different. So I, on average, visited each classroom once per week because there were so many classes I was in, and each teacher expected something different. So for some, I would have a topic for the week that I would do in each class. So for example, I created presentations about food in America, presentations about what daily life is like for a kid their age in America, and would do that in each class week after week. Whereas some classes, they wanted me to just help them teach through the textbook, which was totally fine.
Hmm.
And then in Madrid, it was more by the book. I think that the teachers really wanted to have the students have that root understanding of English language. And so I would often just walk around the class, making sure that they were having their questions answered more one-on-one, and then also taking them out to the hallway to do one-on-one or two-on-one speaking exercises. So using the textbook, using the topics of conversation, working with them that way. But I also wanted to make this as immersive for them as possible. Well, yes, they were having a native English speaker and having that immersion experience. It was also me wanting to share the culture of America and the culture that I grew up in with Seattle, especially being an Asian American, having them learn that there are different perspectives from this country. And so I would create presentations, again, similar things, food, daily life in America, but also trending topics too, like pop culture, which they found really fun. So it overall is about being open to what the teachers may need, but knowing that while you are teaching English, it's also a cultural experience and teaching them about maybe your routines and things that you like too, things that can represent your culture in America.
Yeah, that's a big one. I think an overarching theme is exactly that. I mean, I think that was what I was asked the most of during my time as a language assistant. And Gabby, you can vouch on this too. I think like having stuff prepared, I think preparation in terms of the teaching position itself is always having something about yourself, you know, to introduce yourself when you first get started, whether you're in the volunteer program or you're in Madrid. And then, yeah, the cultural stuff and having that kind of front of mind to share. I'm curious to know also, Marissa, were you in any elective classes? Because I know a lot of times we go in with the perspective like, okay, I'm going to be in English classes and that's what we're going to be working on. But in Spain, I know I was in music classes and chemistry classes and biology classes and whatnot. Were you in any other classes outside of English specific, like language classes?
Multiple. I was in, okay, English, social science, natural science, art, and PE.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice variety.
I mean, I remember when I got my schedule, I was thinking, okay, this isn't down for whatever. That's throw me into whatever. But I remember thinking, what? I just don't even know. But actually, surprisingly, I mean, there's a whole vocabulary that could be useful. Like now the kids know how to say jump, the word jump, which maybe you might not need in daily use, but sometimes it comes in handy. Like
Yeah.
yeah, there was definitely more classes than just English that I was in.
Yeah, I always will find it was like a lot of times about vocabulary and then also pronunciation of said
Mm.
vocabulary, right? And like hearing a native speaker say the the words with a native accent, right? And working on that as well. But yeah, I mean, subject specific English is also super important. I mean, I think I know as someone who has been learning Spanish, I could work on vocabulary in certain subjects too. So the kids also need that. But just out of curiosity, Gabby, what subjects were you teaching outside of English classes in Spain?
Pretty much the equivalent of Marissa. Yeah, that I as she was numbering those off, I was thinking those are the exact classes that I taught as well.
In both
But it was
countries?
in Thailand I taught math actually, which was a good one. I found myself trying to relearn math that I learned in sixth grade because some things you just don't remember if you're not using it every single day, like the language. But I definitely noticed in the Spanish classrooms when I was teaching specific subject areas. You're right, Rachel, too. It's more so like the teachers wanted the students to hear the accent of a native English speaker. So it
Mhm.
wasn't like I was doing all this research of, I didn't know much about the Spanish government, but I felt like I learned a lot in my classroom because I was honestly just rephrasing or rewording things in the English language so that they're able to depict what's happening in their world in both languages at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, listen, I hadn't taken a chemistry class since high school. So when I
and
had a chemistry class, I was like, oh no.
and
Um,
also I was like, as my students specifically in science courses and they were learning specific things, I thought, I don't think I learned this in fifth grade. Like this is something I feel like they introduced in high school. Why are these kids are really smart? And
Yeah, you
I
know.
was so impressed.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, music theory, as like eighth graders, that's pretty hardcore.
That's
Yeah.
crazy. It's awesome though. It's so, so cool.
Yeah, I don't think any sort of music theory classes I took until college even. So yeah, these kids are very advanced. But I will also say, oh no, I lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry. Oh, Rachel, you were talking about teaching in, was it chem and
Yes,
bio? So
yes.
these very sciencey classes. I remember in Leon, I was in a science class, and you're right. I mean, even if you're in a subject that you maybe even are worried about teaching in English to English speakers, it's more about hearing the pronunciation. Like, how do they pronounce this word or that word, and reading the textbook out loud so that they can hear it from the native speaker. So that also is comforting to know that you're not expected to be a subject matter. I mean, that's for the teacher to instruct on. You're just there to support and help them from an English perspective. I know in some cases, some other English assistants that I've known were expected to be subject matters, which can get a little muddy. And in that case, I would just encourage reaching out to either the CIEE group for support on how to handle that situation, and work with the teachers too to bring it back to the focus, the purpose, which is helping the students with English.
Yeah, yeah. I think another piece of advice too is really sharing your passions with your school when you first arrive. Because that's how I got placed in a lot of music classes, because I told them that I played cello and I had been playing cello since I was 4 years old and blah, blah, blah. And they were like, well, we have a class for you. So that was nice, because I mean, it is a passion of mine. And so, I mean, I'm not a total expert on music theory by any means, but I mean, it definitely is, it was more interesting for me to be in those classes and to be helping them, helping students in that way, above and beyond my bio and chem classes that I was in, which I do not have a passion for. So, yeah, definitely share your passions and then your like general interests or subject matter interests as well. Because that can help you get placed in classes that you just share more passion about.
Yeah, and that you're more comfortable teaching English with. I know another English assistant who did CIEE. She's a yoga instructor, a certified instructor. And so she actually did a yoga session with her kids during PE. It was really cool to see that she was able to, combine both passions together.
Yeah, that's fun. I'm sure the kids enjoyed that. Yoga is always a fun time, especially in gym class.
Mm-hmm.
Well, great. So tell us a little bit more. So you were getting kind of back into things. You saw your family from Leon, and tell us about kind of the rest of the experience. Because I know, and I've asked, folks in previous interviews about, because a lot of people have ended up renewing. But I know that you made the difficult decision to not renew, and to go back home. So tell us a little bit about kind of that mindset of, just like how you were feeling throughout the year and kind of your thoughts on coming to the end of your time in Spain.
Yeah, so the rest of the year ended up being so good. Especially because I was kind of off to a rough start in coming to Madrid, I was surprised that it ended up being the exact opposite in the end. I had to make a lot of mental shifts and figure out how to make it a more positive experience, but I'm so glad that I did, because it made it that much better. So that said, I actually had the intentions to renew for a second academic year, and I was going through the process with all the documents and everything. And at the same time, I was thinking about what's next for me beyond teaching, teaching in Madrid. And my heart was still at home, very much so, especially with my partner being here. And having done a long distance relationship definitely contributed to some of the things that made me sad to be away from home and made it difficult. So as supportive as my friends and family and my partner were in me renewing for a second year, I knew that I was being called to come home and lay some foundation here for the next life chapter, which is to get back into the workforce, which I'll touch on a little bit later, but also start foundation with the chapter that I want to start a family, things like that. So I was set to renew, and in making the decision to not renew in the end, I was just weighing all the pros and cons and what would make me happy, what I could foresee making me happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and so, we can kind of get into kind of what is your vision? That's always the golden question. And I know we've touched on this before in previous conversations of ours, but what is the vision? Because I think that, this is the big question for folks when they come to the end of their time teaching abroad, whether you've taught abroad for a year, 2 year, 3 years, and beyond. There is a point where, you have to make a decision about kind of the direction that your future is going to go. So what are your current thoughts on that? And maybe like from the time that you finish your teaching position to now, like where has your brain been at?
Everywhere. Everywhere. I don't know. I was kind of struggling to answer that last question clear and concisely because there's so much going on.
Yeah.
But yes, so let's see, where do I begin? So in deciding not to renew for this next year, I knew that if I was going to renew a second year, I was going to really dedicate to the classroom and do even more work than I did before. Continue building really the students that I had because I would have had them again. And at the same time, I knew I wanted to progress in my career, that in addition, or maybe building off of being an assistant, I wanted to be a teacher, the main teacher. I wanted to be more part of the instruction. I wanted to be more informed of what's going on in the lessons and how to craft everything. So going through the school year, this past year, I realized I'm going to have to make some decisions on how to make that happen. Does that mean going back to school? Does that mean staying here and just kind of validating what I already know, which is that I'm going to have to regroup and rethink the trajectory of my career and advancement. So I am now in the phase of exploring what that looks like for me. I think there's going to be certifications of some sort. So for me, my background is not officially in education, right? I don't have a degree in it. I don't have certifications, but right now I'm exploring what it looks like to go back to school. Is it through a university? Is it through a maybe more fast track program where you don't need those traditional teaching credentials from a university, but you can use your real life experience to get certified in teaching certain subject matters. So I'm doing that. And then I'm sorry, you had to bring me back because I'm starting to go off on more tangents.
No, I think that's exactly, I mean, therein lies the question. And I was totally feeling the same way when I finished teaching. It was like, I wanted more responsibility in the classroom. Like, I really felt like the assistant role, and I think this is good for folks to know, is that, I mean, at the end of the day, you are a language assistant. You don't have a ton of autonomy over what you do in the
Gabby, are you
classroom.
still there?
And so as
That's
someone that
fine.
oh, did you hear me
Sorry, it
okay?
cut out just for 2 seconds.
Oh, I was just saying that this is something that I is really important, I think, because when you're a language assistant, you really don't have a ton of autonomy in the classroom. And if you've kind of opened this door to teaching and you really like it, that's kind of what you're looking for, to move forward in your career. And so yeah, I mean, I ended up becoming a private tutor right after a couple months after I finished teaching, and that was kind of where I took like the immediate direction of my career right after I taught abroad, because I wanted, again, autonomy as a teacher to be able to grow professionally in that way. And I think there's just so many ways that you can go about that. I mean, like you're saying, I think a lot of people end up going back to school or considering going back to school. I know I met up with someone recently that actually went back to school and did their bachelor's from scratch in Spain to become a teacher, like a full-time public school teacher in Spain, which is really cool. So pretty common route, I think, to think about like furthering education, like closer to your passions that you kind of figured out while you were teaching abroad. And then, I think just thinking about like, I know that you had an adjacent role in education, teaching folks things and consulting and things like that. So I think education's a lot bigger than what a lot of people kind of think about. It's like, okay, if I'm going into education, I'm going to be a teacher. True, you can be a teacher, but there's also administrative roles and, just a lot of different facets that you can delve into. So that's kind of the point that it sounds like you're at right now, is like really figuring out like, okay, what certificates could I go into? And I think what I'm curious about too is, and I think a lot of people ask about this too, is like, what's the research process like? Like, where are you looking? Kind of what have you found so far that's been helpful in your journey to kind of be looking around and looking in the market?
Yeah, this actually kind of started before the school year was over. So I started thinking about where do I even start? So I went to YouTube and I started looking up videos of people in their 30s going back to school, whether they had prior college experience before or not. So I was looking at that just to, get an idea of what that experience is like. I also started talking with some friends that I knew had gone through similar experiences in leaving the workforce and then coming back to it for whatever situation was going on in their life at that time. And then also reaching out to people who were doing things that sparked my interest. So I talked with some friends who have worked in university settings doing recruiting. Have talked with people who do similar work that I had done before, which is that community engagement aspect. It's working for a more corporate, in a more corporate situation, but doing these things that you don't really think about when it comes to corporate, like working with students. And I was kind of just picking their brains to get an idea of what kind of jobs exist and how they got into those jobs. So whether it's going back to school, or looking at certain companies or certain areas of work, then you just start going down this whole rabbit hole of, okay, so where can I gain the same experience? How do I get started? Who should I talk to? And what does that mean? What can I do with this information? So also where my brain is at is that I am getting into substitute teaching to see what it's like to teach in the school system here, get my feet wet there and see what things I can make of it to determine what path I want to go down.
Yeah, absolutely. I think talking to people, especially in 2025, I feel like reaching out to people in your network, and people that maybe you aspire, like you're saying, that have positions or are doing things that spark your interest and passions too. I think that really is a great route of reaching out. I know you and I have conversations about like what is beyond teaching abroad and things like that, but yeah, I mean, the only way to know, I think there's just so many avenues that you can explore. And so it's really important to really see the full vision, and kind of lay that out for yourself as you're making a decision. And to spend the time to do that. I mean, I think, like you said, you started this before the end of your teaching position. And I harp on this all the time, that whether you're preparing to teach abroad or you're preparing for the move after what you're going to be doing after teaching abroad, it takes time, and to be patient with that. So that is super, super important. And that's really awesome that you're like in the thick of the journey. I know that that's kind of hard sometimes, but I mean, the world is your oyster at this point, of kind of where you can go next.
Yeah, no, that's literally it. And that's why I had so much brain fog in trying to convey what is going on in here because there's so much going on here because there are so many options and it's a good problem to have, right? It's a problem because you almost don't know what to do, but it's so good because there's such a privilege in having so many choices. And so kind of to bring it back to where I landed in the decision to not renew my contract at my school in coming back home and wanting to settle some roots here, home in Seattle, even though this is kind of happening differently than I had wanted, which is to stay another year. This chapter that I'm in right now is a stepping stone to get to where I want to be. So even if I'm not teaching this academic year that I had wanted to, maybe what I'm doing right now is actually going to allow me to do teaching again, whether it's here in the States or abroad, but in a different way, right? I'll be taking the experiences that I gained in Spain, and then taking the experiences that I'm living right now in the States, and getting to live all the best of all these worlds, which is teaching, it's travel, it's having my friends and family, being with my partner. I get to do all these things. While it might not look exactly what I want it to be right now, I'm working to get there. And
Yeah.
like you said, and what we were talking about when we first started, you have to go with it. You won't know some of these things until you're in the moment, and then things just suddenly make sense. Not suddenly, I shouldn't say that. It's all intentional because every action you take is combining into what it could be later. So it's all intentional, but just rolling with the punches and figuring it out along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, so to kind of conclude everything, I'm curious to know, of the two experiences that you had and kind of reflecting, since you just ended the teaching position earlier this year, what would be like your overall overreaching,, mm-hmm, highlight, of the experience teaching?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think the biggest thing that I would say is, I think, you know, the biggest thing that I would say is, I think, you know, the biggest thing that I would say is, I think, you know, the biggest thing that I would say is, I think, you know, the biggest thing that I would say is, I think, you know, the biggest thing that I would say is, I think, you know, the biggest thing that I would say is, I think, you know, the biggest thing that I would say is, I think, you know, the biggest thing that I would say is, I think, you know, the biggest thing that I would say is, I think, you know, the biggest thing that I would say is, I think, you know, the biggest thing that I would say is, I think, you know, the biggest thing that I would say is, I think, you know, the biggest thing that I would say is, I think, you know, the biggest thing that I would say is, I think, you know, the biggest thing that I would say is, I think, you know, the biggest thing that I would say is, I think, you know, the biggest thing that I would say is, I think, you know, the biggest thing that I would say is, I think, you know, the biggest
Very so worth it. That's what
Mm.
comes to mind. It's so worth it. I mean, it can be scary, it can be exhilarating, it can be very exciting. It's all of those things, and it's definitely worth it if you are wanting to experience something new, if you're wanting to challenge yourself in a different environment. These are some unique experiences that you might not find elsewhere.
Yeah, 100%. To put yourself out there, and do something, shake it up, do something different for sure. What, and I know, so the last time you and I had spoke, you were gearing up to do quite a bit of traveling, after your teaching position. And I've asked everyone in Spain, because I think another big pull for Spain, apart from language, language learning, is also the ability to travel, since you're in Madrid and such a hub, an international hub. So if you can list, again, I've asked others this question, so I'm dying to know what your perspective is on this. What would be your 3 top like travel trips that you took during your time in Spain? This can be from your time when you were volunteering too, but what were the 3 top destinations?
Ooh, okay. Does it have to be within Spain or just anywhere?
Anywhere, anywhere.
Okay. So I would say within Spain, I let's see. Ooh, oh my gosh, where do I start? There's so many. Okay, something that's coming to mind is Asturias, which is northern Spain,
Mm,
and that is a place that I had always known I'd wanted to visit. But when I actually got there, I went with my host family, and it was a really last minute
mm,
weekend trip that we took, and it was so charming. I think it's also speaking to the nature side of me being from the Pacific Northwest.
mm,
It was water, it was trees, it was mountains, and that's home for me. So I really loved Asturias in Spain. I also loved going to Edinburgh with my dad when he came to visit me for the holidays. With Edinburgh being such a huge city and so much architecture, it was beautiful to see in itself, but I also loved seeing how excited my dad got. That was something special for me.
mm.
And then after the school year was over, having my summer vacation, I actually got to go to Croatia for the first time. I went to Dubrovnik with my partner, and it was so beautiful. I am not one to opt for the hotter, beachier type of location, but that said, it was that much more like, oh my gosh, where am I? This is amazing. And yeah, I would say those are some top 3 places that I got to visit.
Those are great recommendations and different from what folks have said before.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's great. That's great. Asturias, I think, is a must see in Spain for sure. Especially if you're kind of a mountainous, um, outdoorsy type of person, I feel like you really can't go wrong in Asturias for sure.
Beautiful.
Very, very beautiful location. One, so I mean, I think coming to present day, and thinking back to, I think it's interesting because you did the volunteer program, had some time at home, and then did the Spain program. I mean, if anyone else is thinking about doing the same thing, what would be your piece of advice for folks that are looking to do those programs in conjunction with each other?
Sorry, both programs, like one or the other, or what conjunction with
No,
each?
like, because I think a lot of people, especially at this point of the year, it's like, okay, maybe I'll go to Spain and like see how it is. I think a lot of people are unsure about maybe spending a full 9 months, 10 months abroad. And so the volunteer ends up being an option. So I think it is a pretty common occurrence that folks will do the volunteer program and then go on to commit to doing the longer program in Madrid. And so I'm curious to know what your piece of advice is for folks who are looking to do that particular type of experience. Like, is there any type of, things to have in mind? It sounds like overall, the 2 experiences are different and to prepare as such. But I mean, is there anything else that you have to say about kind of for folks that are going to be doing those 2 things back to back?
Yeah, I see. Sorry, thank you for bringing me back.
Yeah.
I would advise having goals for yourself and what you want to get out of each program. So for me, because I started living with the host family for 3 months, then moved to the independent program for 9. For me, I was wanting to have that just dive in experience, which is why I chose to live with a family first. And then that inspired me to move the more independent route. Whereas I think if you were to go the opposite, if you live independently first, just knowing that it's going to be a big culture shock. I mean, you're diving into such a big hub, and you're by yourself. I mean, you do have support from friends and from CIEE, but having expectations that it's going to be overwhelming.
Yeah.
Than if you were to go to, or it's going to be overwhelming and a different experience than living with a host family. But in either of those cases, just having expectations for yourself, thinking about what you want out of it, and being open to whatever may come along the way to make the most of each experience.
Yeah, 100%. I think a nugget of advice that somebody else had said in these last couple of days for interviews was to journal. And so I think that goes along with what you're saying, is really to like get serious about what you're wanting to get out of the experience. Particularly if you're doing the volunteer program, because I think a lot of the motivation behind that is, to work on your Spanish and to really immerse yourself in that, dive right in, like you're saying. But yeah, to document that. And to kind of see where you come. I'm a big proponent of, and my college made me do this before my study abroad experience in Spain, actually. They made us write letters to ourselves, like our future selves. So if you can do that, I mean, I think what Marissa's saying is so true. It's like, you never know what's going to change. And to set out kind of goals for yourself and then check back in on those when you get back from teaching or just living abroad in general is a really cool little personal experiment. If anyone's looking for just like being able to measure your personal growth while you're abroad.
Yeah, actually, sorry, how much time do we have? Because that makes me think of 2 things that I want to.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so that reminds me. So I remember when I was getting ready to move to Madrid, I was getting ready to move to Madrid, and I happened to look at an old journal entry from a few years before when I was in Leon. And it was, I think, the first week I had just arrived in Leon, and it was just reflecting on, oh my gosh, I'm here. I made this happen. Like, I can't believe I made it happen. And I took that as encouragement into going into Madrid of I did it once, I can do it again. They're going to be different experiences, but this I'm so grateful that I was able to get myself here. And I remember also at this point, it was probably 2019 or maybe, yeah, 2019. Um, and we're in 2025 now. And I was talking with someone and they were asking, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I said, I don't know where I see myself, but I know what I will have done. And I would have gone, or I will have gone to Spain and taught English. And I got to do that. It took a few years to get there, but I did it not only once, but twice. So something else I would say is to encourage yourself. The cheesiness aside, really truly believe in yourself, because if it's not anyone else, you have to depend on yourself to get to where you want to be. Sometimes that can be challenging. Completely have been there, and a lot of us have, but just remembering to believe in yourself and do all the things that you want to do.
Yeah,
I am
that's so funny.
obsessed with
Yeah,
I'm obsessed to how Marissa just said that. I don't know where I'll see myself in 5 years, but I know what I will have done. Oh my gosh, I love that. And I also completely forgot you guys are talking about journaling. I am not one to write things down. I'm so much more on the visual side. I take way too many photos. Like anywhere I go, it could be of literally nothing. But I had also found a journal entry. Again, I don't write, so I don't know why I did this, but it was like before I ever taught abroad. So it was before the Thailand program, because I did that one before Spain. And I had written, I don't know if I want to teach abroad because I just don't know what else to do. Or I'm like getting bored of life in the United States. But I think I want to go to Thailand, or I think I want to move abroad for a while. Like, I don't know if it'll actually happen. I found that like after Spain. So after Thailand, after Spain, and I was like, could you like, I don't know. It is, Rachel, you're so right. Like looking at that personal growth and being like, oh my gosh, it was totally, I mean, it wasn't running away from anything. It was completely running towards what I wanted in life. And like, I didn't even know what I wanted. I didn't know, um, So crazy. I think more
Yeah.
people should write more things down, including me. I need to continue writing things down.
100%.
And like you said, Gabby, it could be pictures, right? If you're taking pictures all the time, think about what's going on in your life at that moment, and having that's a document in itself. Is having that picture. Picture can say 1,000 words is the saying, right? So
Yeah.
self-encouragement, self-reflection, and then also just listening to your gut, because I think what I'm hearing in all of our experiences is we have this innate thing of what we want for ourselves. And, we didn't quite know how it was going to come to fruition, but it did. Sure enough, it did.
Yeah.
Totally.
To trust that feeling too, for sure. Yeah. So in conclusion, get a journal, people. Write it down. Okay. I think that's a good conclusion and a good end to this conversation. I want to thank you, Marissa, so much for coming today and sharing your experience. I really appreciate it, and I wish you all the best as you open up this new chapter. After having taught abroad, I'm sure there are great things in store for you. So yeah, I wish you all the best, and thank you so much. And thanks guys for coming to the webinar today. And I'll be posting this on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can drop some comments. You can message us at teach@ciee.org if you have any questions.
Perfect. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really happy to have been here and have this conversation with you. So thank you, and wish all the best for you as well. And if you're thinking about making the move, do it. Just do it. Just do it.
I love it. I love it. We're stealing Nike's catchphrase here at CIEE.
I've heard this before.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Marissa, and I hope everyone has a good rest of their day.
Bye.
Bye.